Welcome back. We're live on Channel 5 with Esther and Darryl. And Darryl, you knew that one already?
I did. That's my hometown, Horwich, in Bolton.
And we know what the stadium's called?
The stadium is called the Tough Sheet Community Stadium.
I like that you said that very
I'm not quite
like,
comments.
Got to be really careful with that one.
Okay, later on we're going to find out how to save some money on your energy bills with consumer king Harry Kind. But now I want your calls on this. Manchester United non-footballing staff will have reportedly been given just a week to stop working from home or resign. Now, it's part of plans to cut costs. The club says if people don't want to return, it provides options for people to step away. But is that fair? Is it okay for a company to say stop working from home or quit? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring. Darryl, what's your views on this?
I think it's a disgrace. Actually,
Really?
I do. I really do. I think on a number of levels. And I think this sort of Victorian warehouse mentality of we all have to be trudging to the office 5 days a week, putting the interest of, I guess, the whims of the people in charge of the business ahead of the well-being and in some cases the productivity of the workforce is just a really horrible, nasty trend that we seem to have fallen into. I'm not quite sure why we continue to have this tussle. We've shown time and time again that giving your workforce autonomy, this isn't necessarily about people working. I think there is an argument to say, come into the office twice a week, once a week. You know, show yourself, collaborate, be around your fellow workforce, understandably. But to remove autonomy, people given the opportunity to have flexibility in their lives. We learned during COVID that there is more to work, that we are multifaceted as human beings and we don't have to chain ourselves to a desk 8 hours a day. And the business benefits as well. This is the bit that I find most surprising, is that study after study after study shows that the more autonomy you give to your workforce, the better they are at the job.
Well, hold on, you don't want to give complete autonomy to them or they won't show up.
No, as I said, it's reasonable to say maybe come in once, twice a week. But you've got to come in every single work day or else leave is an extraordinary thing to say.
Giving them a week seems a bit tough, does it not, Esther?
I mean, I think the thing is, I find the outrage around this quite interesting because you never hear people outraged by construction workers or plumbers having to go in to work 5 days a week because that's the nature of their job, right? If you wanted your toilet fixed, you have the luxury of working from home, but your plumber doesn't. But you don't see people with placards outraged over people that have those kinds of jobs. At the end of the day, the boss calls the shots because it's his business and it's about profitability. Now, I do think that we now live in an era where all businesses, particularly ones where you can do work from home, won't necessarily say come in 5 days a week. But it depends on the nature of your job. Are you as productive or even more productive working from home? Do you have a better work-life balance? Are you a happier employee? If the answer is yes to all of that, it will make sense for the business to say, okay, work from home X days a week. That's fine. But at the end of the day, the decision is for the business owner, not the employee. Now, in the nature of the work market, the job market, if people find that there are more companies that are offering, or the companies that they prefer to work for are ones that offer work from home, then they will gravitate towards that. And then the nature of the workplace will change. Bosses will be forced to have to offer some work from home options because you just can't find people that will want to work from home from the office 5 days a week. So it's not for us to say, but the nature of the work of the labour market will change.
Which is, by the way, what's happening. And I think that Sir Jim will probably run into a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if we were having this conversation in 6-12 months' time and that policy had been reversed, because he will find, perhaps not hard to find a full workforce who are going to come in all of the time, but he will find that there are people he wants to recruit who are not going to come to work for him because they are not being given that autonomy. And
I also think it depends on the kind of job you do.
I just make one point about this because we seem to get, because this is the argument that's levelled at the freedom to work from home a lot, is that some other people can't. I mean, you can't. We can't. We are literally out of. We are working for, and it's a false equivalence, really. Of course, there are some jobs where you are not able to work from home, and that's fine. When you enter a profession that you know that you need to be on site or present, or you're a doctor or a construction worker or a television presenter or whatever it may be, then that's sort of part of your. I think
the reason why people make the point is because there's such a righteous indignation of people that say, oh, it's an outrage that you don't.
But it's not a reason to remove autonomy from some.
It's not about. But the thing is, there's the indignation of people that say, oh, it's an outrage. It's almost like borderline sort of Victorian warehouse mentality to make me work from home. Actually, it literally just depends on your job and what you do, and also also it depends on what your boss says. You are very welcome to find another job if you don't think this is acceptable.
No, I think
and the labour market will adjust to what the supply and demand and the nature of the workforce is.
I think it is an outrage.
But I do think that this I don't get outraged by it, because guess what? There are some people that would be desperate enough for a job or be willing to work for those wages, that are willing to go in 5 days a week. You can't dictate to those people what they can and shouldn't do.
Well, there'll also be people that prefer it. But Darryl, I just want to pick you up on a point that you said earlier. You said at the whims of those employers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are also the people that pay your wages. Isn't that your job, to work at the whim of the person paying
Absolutely
your wages?
not. Absolutely not. Of course it isn't. I mean, you have workers' rights. I mean, if we worked at the whims of our
what if there are no jobs?
Hang on a minute. If we throughout history decided that the whim of the whim of the business leader took precedent, we wouldn't have a weekend.
That's not what takes precedent. It's the labour market that takes precedent.
We wouldn't have a minimum wage. We would have no maternity pay. There are all sorts of safeguards and bits of autonomy that a workforce are allowed, because that has to be a delicate balance.
That's not. I'm sorry. That is not rooted in reality. That's not rooted in reality. You have a labour market. You have to have jobs available, and you have to have people willing to do those jobs, and the two are always interacting with each other. This idea that the preferences of the employee comes first. Well, it depends on the nature of the labour market. If you are an employee that's in high demand, if you're highly skilled, you get to have a lot more say over the kinds of work, the jobs that you do and who you choose to work for. If you are a low-skilled, low-paid person, you don't have that many rights. And you could say, yes, unions, but union levels are at their lowest. I think less than 1 in 5 people are part of a union in this country.
The strength or otherwise of a union, and that's a big other question, isn't it, about gig economy work and insecure jobs, insecure work, and what that does to the country. It brings us back to the conversation about crime. But it isn't true to say that the market completely dictates, because we intervene in the market with things like safeguards, maternity pay, sick pay, holidays, weekends, for crying out loud.
But that has influenced the market. Listen, here's the thing. At the end of the day, we're all individuals and we get to make a choice. You get to choose who you work for and who you don't work for. And absolutely, that is the autonomy that you're talking about. But once you choose...
Well, they can
work for any of the other 19 teams in the Premier League.
Hang on a minute. Do what I want or leave isn't a choice. That's an instruction.
That's a choice. That is a choice.
No, it isn't a choice.
If you don't want to be here today, you didn't have to.
It's a false choice.
No, it's not a false choice.
Let's go to the calls. Kathy from Lancashire, what's your view on this one? Is it fair to say come to the office or find another job?
Absolutely, Storm. Okay. Nice to speak, by the way. No, when they started the jobs, they were probably working in the office. And if they don't like it, go.
Yep.
Okay, Kathy, but we had lockdown, we had COVID, and I think the tide did change quite rapidly at that point, where we realised, first of all, a lot of jobs could be done at home and function very well being done at home. And also productivity in some things went up. So maybe the labour force now are saying this doesn't make any sense to ask us to come back into the office anymore.
Nobody answers the phone, Storm, when you ring off companies. So what we're going
That's a different issue, Kathy. They're sacking all of their staff. That's why.
The thing is, we're talking about it like business owners don't want their businesses to do well. If business owners are saying more people should come into work 3, 4, 5 days a week, it's because their bottom line is being affected. At the end of the day, the businesses are responsible for are interested in how much they're making as a profit, as opposed to fundamentally
the well-being of
the employees who are free to leave the job.
And you've just said it. That's perfect. Absolutely.
But
people
that's the
put
truth.
profit. Hang on a minute.
It's a contract. It's a trade. Again, if you're trading your services, you have to give something in return.
I think I'm right in saying that Manchester United turns a profit. I can be corrected on that, but I'm pretty
there are also 19 other teams in the Premier League that turn a profit, and you're perfectly welcome to.
We're googling it as we speak.
Okay, great. Yeah, please do. And by the way, their football workforce, they work from the office, and they finished 8th this season. They've been terrible.
Are you joking? Are you comparing the value of someone like Anthony to a social media administrator?
I'm taking you into the structure of
someone
their
that is worth tens of millions of pounds as a player versus someone who's paid £15 an hour.
No, I'm taking you into.
Surely you understand the economics
I'm taking you. Of course, I'm being a bit cheeky, but I'm taking you into the structure of their business. The point the point you made is that profit comes above people.
Yeah, and some employees are more profitable than others. The reason why Manchester United is telling these people they can go and find another job is because they're not Anthony.
But then we end up...
They're not the major players of the team.
But hang on,
club.
but then we end up judging people on their economic output.
That's it. That's how economic works.
I'm being told in
that's
my
how
ear,
economic works.
it is very profitable.
It is very profitable.
But this is the point. Some employees are more valuable than others. This is not a controversial thing to say.
No, that isn't the point, though, is it?
But that's the point you're making.
Well, hang on a bit. No, because what? Yes, in a sense, but that's different to judging people based on their economic output.
That's how it works.
Judging people in their life. So
that's how it works.
Hang on.
But hold on, we've gone off the boil here, I think, slightly to what an employee is.
The reason why Manchester United is not telling their starting 11 to leave if they don't want to work from home or whatever, instead of telling that to their social media administrators and all the people that do the back end work of the team. There's a reason behind that.
But the argument
one earns £15 an hour, the other one £60.
The argument you're making there is that the lower your economic output, the fewer value, the fewer rights you have.
Yep.
That's the argument you're making. Well, that, by the way,
that's
an argument that we nipped in the bud literally in the 19th century. I mean, that's 19th century
it's
Victorian warehouse.
And there's a reason for that. And guess what? If your economic value is higher, you have more choice.
Absolutely terrifying.
If you're a doctor and you don't like your working conditions, you can go and work literally anywhere in the world because everyone needs a doctor. Not everyone needs a social media.
That is terrifying.
Okay, that's the difference.
That's
basic economics. Take it up with basic
Manchester,
economics.
what's your view when it comes to working from home? Do you think you have a right to it, or do you think your employer has a right to say get back in the office or find a new job?
So I've got a bit of a different perspective on this. So I'm disabled and I work full time. Mm-hmm. And I've been at companies where they've tried to force people back into work. Mm-hmm. And as a reasonable adjustment, I need to work from home. Mm-hmm. But because they're wanting to force people back into work and have this ideology of being in the office, mm-hmm. I then get comments such as it's not fair to other people. And my then reasonable adjustments are ignored.
Oh. Which is illegal.
Frankie, that doesn't
That's
sound
illegal.
very legal.
By the way, it's illegal because we intervened in the market to stop it being legal.
Well, the thing
Sounds
is,
a bit like you're arguing that Frankie
I'm sorry. Someone with a disability cannot literally be forced to go into work if they can't. If you are able, and you took on that job knowing the conditions of work, then you don't have a leg to stand on. I absolutely do believe that we have to make reasonable adjustments. That's why it's the law. But there's a complete difference between saying you've hired someone that's happy to work 5 days a week and now is suddenly moaning
but actually, I think there might be. Hold on,
that doesn't undermine it.
Wait, I want to get back to Frankie here because actually there might be a grey area here, and I'd like to hear your experience in this, Frankie, because so employers could ask you to make reasonable adjustments to make your way into work if that was possible. Let's say 1 day a week. Is that the sort of thing you're being asked to do?
Yeah, so previously, say if I'm disabled and I'm going for a job, the market's pitted against me anyway for being disabled. But then, obviously, there's not many remote jobs out there, which means then you have to go for a hybrid role. So then if I go for a hybrid role and I'm told legally, through reasonable adjustments, they're meant to make these changes. But then when you make the point of, if you go in for a hybrid role, you should have to go into the office, it's then leaving no work for disabled people to go to because these remote jobs are being so oversaturated and the likelihood that a disabled person's going to get one of them jobs is low.
I do take your point there, Frankie. Do you not think, though, with the change in attitudes towards working from home, because although we're talking about Manchester United, who wants everyone back in the office, a lot of companies have actually opened their eyes to it being cheaper, more effective, more productive to have their workforce at home. Has the job market not opened up to you slightly more since COVID?
It has, but it's not fully there, especially, like I said, when it comes to reasonable adjustments for disabled people. Yeah, legally they're not meant to, but it happens and it's very, very difficult to challenge because the help isn't there.
I think a lot of the time going into the
office... Pardon, sorry?
Have you lost work because of this?
I've had to leave businesses because it's had such a strain on my health, having to fight for something that I can't help and that I need to be able to work and live. But I think a lot of the time employers are wanting people in the office. Like the job that I do, I don't need to be in the office. And it's all down to control and micromanagement. And when going into an office is physically damaging for somebody because of health reasons that they can't help, you then begrudge going in. You're being forced to go in for no other reason than control.
And Frankie, can I just ask, I don't mean to pry too much, but what is your disability and what makes it very hard for you to do that commute? What was the difficulty there?
So I have autism, so therefore I have sensory differences and difficulties. Okay. So even lights in offices can be overwhelming for me. Having open planned offices, which a lot of them are in city centres, is very overwhelming because there's a lot going on. People eating their food, like squeaking plates, it's physically painful for me. So
I'm only smiling because I think a lot of people have difficulty with certain people in the office. But I totally take your point, actually, Frankie, that actually just going into the office even one day a week, actually your productivity sounds like it would go down as well.
Yeah, it would, because I pay a consequence for being in that environment. So then to be forced to be in that environment when I can do the job from home, and then when my productivity goes down because I've been forced to go in and then be penalised for that, I'm in a lose-lose situation, which I think a lot of disabled people are in when it comes to employment.
Do you actually think that the workforce should open up more and working from home be more of a sort of standard that would really benefit somebody like
I think it'd enable a lot of disabled people to work, and what I would say is a lot of disabled people have got a lot of talents, like problem-solving skills that other people don't have because of the way that they've had to live their lives, and they can be really productive to a workforce, but employers have got to be open and understanding and want to give disabled people the right environment, i.e. working from home, which from my experience, many of them do not want to do.
That's really interesting. Thank you very much for calling, Frankie. Actually, I think you make some really important points there. I think when we take in those with disabilities, the debate does change.
I mean, the government has and should do more to step in. I mean, if you look at the continent, so if you look at Europe, for instance, you actually have like places like France where companies are fined. So instead of even making room for people with disabilities, they just have to pay a fine as a percentage of their workforce. The UK is different. We've actually made a lot more progress on that. We have sort of worked with the major supermarkets, for instance, that actually free up jobs for people with certain types of disabilities. Now, obviously, they need to do more and open it up to certain industries. But also, it's a fine balance between burdening employers and then actually finding jobs for disabled people that are fulfilling for them, but also rewarding for the business, which is a fine line. But that's completely different from exactly.
Well, we'll have to see.
I don't think a disabled person is ever a burden on a business. I think that businesses should absolutely.
I was referring to the reasonable adjustments.
Reasonable adjustments, that have to be made. But I mean, really interesting, that conversation, absolutely. And only time will tell to see whether Manchester United has to renege on that, as Darryl says, that they
can start winning some games.
Thank you very much for all your calls.